Okay, today we talk about two books that I probably will never read that I own, and I felt like this was a pretty interesting video idea and a pretty interesting thing to discuss because these are books that, for their own reasons, I probably will never get to, but I bought and I, for whatever reason, thought I would undertake these monumental tasks. So, Finnegan's Wake, we'll save that to the end because it's so obvious why I'm not going to read it, but the first thing is Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. And purely the size alone should be reason for me not to read this. Like, it literally takes up the whole screen. I think it's 1,400 pages. And the reason I bought this is because I read Anthem and I was like, this is really interesting. I want to get more of this. I want to understand more of what Rand has to say. I don't necessarily agree with her in a lot of things, but interesting. It's thought provoking. It makes me ask questions. It makes me question my own beliefs. And any author that can do that, I genuinely want to spend time with their readings. But yeah, this book, I don't know. The general premise of the book is that there's this civilization, and basically the industrialists start to sabotage it because they haven't been given enough. They want to, in some way, form a breakaway society, and there's all these interesting ideas. There's all these interesting carryovers to what we see today with this growing technocracy and this growing AI bubble that we're seeing, and how human beings are going to slowly become obsolete, and all sorts of interesting things with this. It's basically Ayn Rand writing about her boyfriend, which was a Rothschild at the time. Very interesting stuff, and it's all stuff that I normally would be completely engrossed in, but I don't know. I just know I'm going to pick this up, and I know I'm going to read about 50 pages, and I know I'm going to put it right back down. I can tell you that, and I could promise you that. There might be a day where I have the patience. There might be a day where, I don't know, maybe I'm in the hospital and I have nothing better to do for about 2 weeks, and I sit down to do this. But it just seems to me like reading this book, I'm not going to get as much as I hope to get from it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe somebody's read it. Maybe somebody's took the time to, go through this book and they can tell me who John Galt is. But I don't know. Right now, it doesn't seem like it's worth it. Right now, I'd much rather go through many, many, many more works, perhaps even read other works by Ayn Rand that are far shorter, that I can get a lot more bang for your buck. To me, reading long books, it's usually not worth it. I could get the same amount of information, or the same amount of inspiration through a smaller work. And if I want to read a particular author, I'll just find a smaller work of theirs, because there's something that Borges said. He said something along the lines of, like, if it takes you 700 pages to say something that you said in seven, are you really that good of an author? Broadly paraphrasing, but that's my general takeaway from something he said at some point. And I wish I could cite you to where he said it, but I can't remember. I've read so many of his essays and so many of his commentaries on things that it's somewhere in there. I promise you can find it, but that's really my takeaway from something he said, and that's something that really stuck with me. And even for a very long time, Emerson has been one of my favorite writers, simply for the fact that he says what a lot of other philosophers say. He says the same sort of sentiments that Nietzsche or Heidegger says, but he says it so clearly and so crisply. Nietzsche it says it very profoundly too, and very shortly too. But maybe that's another reason I enjoy his writing. But it's the brevity with the depth that I really enjoy about writing, and that's really probably why I like poetry so much and why it's so moving to me. But yeah, we will get into Finnegan's Wake, because I think this is a perfect segue into a book that, yeah, like this is a book that, to understand, I don't know if you could ever do it, but you'd probably have to read it a billion times. And I have more things that I want to do with my life aside from read Finnegan's Wake. And the reason this is so complex is because James Joyce kind of believed, I don't know if he said this, but this is my understanding, but he more or less believed that people got too much of Ulysses, that it made too much sense. And if you read Ulysses, you know it makes absolutely no sense. But basically, Ulysses had this common thread, and he kind of interpolated with parts of the Odyssey, so that there was some sort of semblance of structure, and there was something going on where Finnegan's Wake is a pure fever dream. He uses a million different languages in it, uses every single literary device that could even be imagined. It references absolutely everything, and I don't know if it's worth my time. I hate to say it that way, but like the time I would devote to understand even a page of Finnegan's Wake, I could probably read all of Dante and I could probably enjoy all of Dante. And to me, there is some there is some merit to be gained when an author hides something and makes it something that you have to reread and reread and reread and reread. But to me, I like stories, or I like information that you can understand from the lowest level of intelligence to the highest level of intelligence. I think universality has something very profound in it, and I think for whatever reason, those are kind of the symbols and kind of the messages that resonate with me most. I see the reason for both. I see the reason for, trying to hide the depth of your sincerity. Even Dante, to a certain degree, he's hiding his somewhat heretical beliefs in the Divine Comedy. And if the church really understood what he was saying, it really wouldn't have adopted it as a Divine Comedy. But again, that's a whole nother argument. That's a whole nother thing. But overall, Finnegan's Wake just scares me because I genuinely don't know how to read it, and I don't think anybody genuinely knows how to. Maybe you can get some sort of framework. Maybe you can get some sort of help with going through the monumental task of reading Joyce's Finnegan's Wake, but I'm not going to be your guide. I'm not going to probably ever read it, and it's probably going to sit on my shelf as almost a challenge, almost as something looking you in the face and you averting your eyes. That's my relationship with Finnegan's Wake. But maybe I flip through it. Maybe I go through it at some point, or read sections that are perhaps more easy to go through. But yeah, these are two books I own that I probably will never read. Let me know if you have any similar books. Let me know if you feel this way about anything in particular. I think this is an interesting thing to go through because I feel like we all have books that sit on our shelves, and we all have books that we're like, I'm going to read, but I could only find two in probably my 1,000, or I don't know how many books I have. It's probably around 1,000, maybe 800, 900, somewhere around there. But in all the books I had, I could find no justification to pick these two up, and these are the two least likely for me to ever pick up. If you ever see me talk about these books, then I was not true to my word and call me an idiot for that. But yeah, with that said, these are two books I own. Honestly, the funniest part is these books are not cheap either. This one was like, I think this one was like 30, and this one was like probably 30 or 35, something like that as well. So it's like, it's money I could have spent on books I would actually enjoy, but I spent on books that I will probably never get to. And yeah, with that said, I love you guys so much. Thank you guys so much. This was just kind of I don't know if you would say a throwaway video, but more so a fun video instead of like a substantive one. But yeah, with that said, I love you guys. Peace out. I will catch you in the next one.